The doctor's hands were trembling. I noticed it first before I realized what else was wrong. She wasn't looking at the ultrasound screen, the place where my baby's tiny heart should have been rhythmically pulsing in black and white. No, she was fixated on the medical file in front of her, more specifically, the name printed at the top, my husband's name. She didn't speak for a moment, just sat there in a quiet, uncomfortable stillness as the fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Then, in one swift move, she reached over and shut off the ultrasound machine, the soft flicking sound echoing through the sterile exam room as though someone had pulled the plug on my entire life. Mrs. Mercer, her voice was barely above a whisper. I need to speak with you in private right now. Something about her tone hit me in the chest. Panic spiked through my bloodstream. I grabbed the edge of the exam table to steady myself, already replaying every possible tragedy. Was the baby okay? Was there no heartbeat? She led me into her personal office, shut the door, and this is when I knew something was seriously wrong, locked it from the inside. I collapsed in the chair across from her desk, hands over the curve of my belly, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. She took a deep breath before speaking. You need to leave your husband today before you even go home. And you're going to need a divorce attorney. It was so shocking, so unbelievable that I actually laughed. I laughed right there in her office, thinking it had to be some kind of mistake or overly dramatic misunderstanding. A divorce? Are you serious? We're having a baby together. We're happy. What are you talking about? She didn't smile, didn't blink. That's the exact problem, she said. What I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about your marriage. And she was right. Because from that moment on, nothing, not my marriage, not my baby, not my sense of safety, was real anymore. But let me take you back. Before the doctor's trembling hands and the truth that shattered my life, I was just Daphne Wilson, 32 years old, ambitious, success-focused. I worked as a marketing director for a boutique creative agency in Connecticut. I came from what society politely calls old money. My family never flaunted our wealth, and I'd been raised to believe that success should be earned, not inherited. I drove a rattling Subaru, brewed my own coffee at home, and worked hard to climb the ladder. Still, one thing made me different: my grandmother's estate. When she passed away 5 years ago, she left me a trust fund worth $2.3 million and the ancestral Wilson family home, a giant ivy-covered mansion that had belonged to my family for 5 generations. It was gorgeous, full of history and stories, and practically a landmark in our small New England town. I didn't flaunt any of it. In fact, most people assumed I didn't come from money at all. That's how I liked it. But what I didn't know back then, what none of us think about, is that wealth doesn't just give you security. Sometimes it puts a target on your back. And my future husband aimed with terrifying precision. Enter Grant Mercer. I met him at the Wilson family's annual charity gala, a decades-old event full of pearls, champagne, and carefully cultivated smiles. That night I was hiding at the bar, trying to politely escape a man who'd asked about my asset portfolio 5 minutes into our first conversation. Classy, right? That was when Grant strolled up. Tall, crisp suit, easy smile, confident but not arrogant. What are you drinking? You look like you're trying to escape the saxophone solo, he joked, gesturing toward the terrible jazz band. That's how it began. He never brought up my name or family or money, claimed he was a financial advisor who had scored a last-minute invite from a colleague, acted like he had no idea who the Wilsons even were. And maybe that should have been my first red flag. I mean, a financial advisor attending a high-profile charity event without researching the host family. That's like a chef walking into Top Chef and saying, "Oh, we're cooking today." But I was tired of gold diggers, tired of men who saw me as a walking ATM. And here was this guy asking about my favorite books instead of balance sheets. So I gave him my number. He called the next day, and we started dating. Those first 6 months felt like magic. He was thoughtful, attentive, memorized all the small details people usually forget: how I took my coffee, the exact kind of wine I liked after a long day. He insisted on paying for every dinner even though I easily made 3 times his income. I admired that. It felt like he had integrity, pride. My mother, Vivian, didn't buy the act. She met Grant once and pulled me aside afterward. That man's smile doesn't reach his eyes, she said. Something's off, Daphne, I can feel it. Oh, we argued about him constantly. I told her she was paranoid, that she just couldn't accept that someone finally made me happy. Eventually, we stopped talking entirely. It was supposed to be a phase. I figured we'd reconnect once she'd warmed up to him. Spoiler alert, she was absolutely right from the start. 1 year later, we were married. A beautiful ceremony at my grandmother's estate, white flowers draped across wrought iron arches, that warm spring air that feels like a promise. He cried during his vows, real tears, as he swore to love and protect me forever. At the time, I thought those tears were from joy. Looking back now, they were tears of relief. His con was in motion and it was working. That first year of marriage seemed normal. We tried for a baby, didn't work. Month after month, nothing. Eventually, we saw a fertility specialist. What they told us knocked the wind out of me. Grant had what they called severe male factor infertility, almost no viable sperm, and the few that existed, practically immobile. The words natural conception is highly unlikely were burned into my brain. He cried in the car outside the clinic, apologized, said he felt like he'd failed me. I held his hand, told him we'd figure it out because that's what marriage is, right? You fight together, not against each other. I didn't know the man sitting beside me wasn't grieving. He was recalculating. We moved forward with ICSI, a specialized form of IVF where a single sperm is injected directly into an egg. Grant handled the research, emailed doctors, managed appointments, found the clinic he just knew was the best. I thought he was going above and beyond because he felt responsible, like he wanted to save our dream of becoming parents. What I didn't realize, he wasn't saving anything. He was setting a trap. We'd chosen ICSI, the most targeted, expensive, emotionally draining form of IVF. One sperm, one egg, one hopeful outcome. But IVF is never a guarantee. Our first cycle failed. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. I remember the nurse's voice, polite, detached, like she'd said it 1,000 times before. I'm so sorry, the embryo didn't take. I collapsed in bed and stayed there for 3 days, didn't shower, didn't eat. Grant brought me tea, said all the right things, whispered reassurances in the dark. We'll try again, love. We're going to be great parents someday. This isn't the end. And I believed him. Because what else do you do, especially when you're supposed to be a team? The second cycle. 7 months ago, with everything riding on this second try, Grant dove into planning again. He acted like a man obsessed with making things perfect, researching supplements, clinic protocol, diet plans, yoga for fertility, everything. He also insisted on handling all the paperwork. Said I was too emotionally exhausted, that he wanted to carry the burden for a while. It felt sweet, supportive, slightly patronizing, but maybe that was the hormones talking. This time it worked. 2 pink lines, positive. A baby. We stood in our bathroom staring at the test like it was a treasure map, both of us silently rewriting our future in real time. I cried, and for the first time in weeks, they were happy tears. Grant held me like I was the most precious thing in the world. We should update the will, he told me later that week. You know, now that we're a real family. I thought he was being practical, mature, responsible. But he was already planning the final stage of the cons. On the surface, everything looked perfect. The doting husband, the beautiful estate, the long-awaited pregnancy. We even picked out baby names together. But under the surface, something shifted. The distance set in. At first, it was small things. His phone screen always facing down. A new password I didn't know. Phone calls he took outside, short clipped words, hushed tone, long silences. It's work, he told me, client emergencies. At 11:00 p.m. on a Saturday. And somehow every week became urgent. He started working late more often. 3 nights a week. Then 4. Sometimes till midnight. I told myself it made sense. After all, he was in finance. Maybe the market volatility was increasing client demands. Except markets don't operate at midnight. When I pressed him on it, he dismissed me. You're being hormonal deaf. It's normal to feel anxious during pregnancy. My mother warned me about this, pregnant women get irrationals. That one cut the deepest. Because he didn't just lie, he weaponized my pregnancy against me, twisting the thing I was growing in my body into a tool for emotional manipulation. The worst part, it worked. I started second-guessing myself. Financial suggestions became financial demands. Around the same time, his requests around money began. Subtle at first. It's just smart to add me to your trust in case something happens during delivery. Power of attorney is something every couple should have. We should sell your grandmother's place. It's way too big. I could invest the proceeds. Invest the proceeds. This man, who once asked me how to cancel a Netflix subscription because the website was confusing, wanted to manage a $2.3 million inheritance. Absolutely not. I said no gently. His response was not gentle. The warmth in our marriage evaporated. He began sleeping on the furthest edge of the bed, said I moved around too much. He frowned when I cried. He ignored me when I asked him to talk. He didn't touch me anymore. I don't want to hurt the baby, he claimed. It's just I can't relax. It sounded caring on the surface, but it felt like rejection in my marrow. The gaslighting deepened. Every time I confronted him with something odd, credit card charges I didn't recognize, weird hotel stays just 40 minutes from home, dinner tabs for two at places I'd never been, he had an answer. A little too fast. Networking dinner, I told you about that meetings. Conference in the city ended late, it made more sense to book a room. Honey, are you really keeping tabs on my receipts now? You know someone's good at lying when they can make you feel like a bad person for noticing they're lying. At one point, during a particularly tense argument, he sighed and said, "This is what I was afraid of. You've stopped trusting me. People warned me this could happen when I married up." I apologized to him. That's what he was most skilled at, making me feel like the crazy one. He used guilt and passive aggression like a scalpel, always smiling, always sweet on the surface. It was like being gaslit with rose petals. Then came the call at 2:00 a.m. I woke one night, 19 weeks pregnant, and the bed beside me was empty. I found him hunched in the kitchen, back to me, whispering into his phone. It's almost time. By spring, everything will be settled. When he saw me, he ended the call instantly. Work emergency, he said, go back to bed. And I did. Because exhaustion feels like a drug when you're pregnant and emotionally burned out, you start pulling the blanket back over the red flags, telling yourself it's just stress or hormones. But something inside me was beginning to stir. Not fear, not anger, not confusions. Resolve. Tara saw it first. The following week, my best friend Tara came over for lunch. As I made us salads and tried to explain away every weird thing Grant had been doing, she just sat there quietly. She didn't interrupt, just watched me unravel in real time. Then finally she said, "Daff, listen to yourself, none of this sounds okay. When's the last time Grant looked at you like he saw you, not the performative stuff in public, just you?" I didn't have an answer. "When's the last time you talked to your mom?" I couldn't answer that either. Your gut knows, Daff, trust it. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of the backache, not because of the baby fussing. Because I knew I was ignoring something dangerous. The appointment. 4 months pregnant. Routine OB visit, nothing special. Only my usual doctor was out of town, so I'd been booked with a colleague, Dr. Claire Brennan. No big deal. I went alone that morning. Grant, of course, had a client meeting he couldn't miss. The nurse did the usual checks. Dr. Brennan asked polite small talk about vitamins, movement, blood pressure. Then she pulled up my file and everything changed. Her entire face shifted. Eyes flicked from my chart to me, back to the page. She froze. hands shaking. She turned off the ultrasound monitor mid-exam, gently closed the file and said, I need to speak with you privately. And suddenly I was back in that place of panic, waiting to hear what was wrong with the baby. Only it turned out, it wasn't my baby at all. It was everything else. Dr. Claire Brennan locked the office door behind her and folded her hands, trying to collect herself. I sat across from her, breath hollow in my chest, heart racing, already imagining every possible tragedy. Still convinced I was about to be told my baby had no heartbeat. Instead, she opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder, the edges bent from how many times it had been looked through. Her voice was calm but shaking underneath it. Mrs. Mercer, what I'm about to show you can't wait. My sister works at the fertility clinic where you did IVF, and 3 weeks ago she came to me. In tears, she told me everything. And then just now, when I saw your husband's name on your chart, it all connected. As she slid the folder toward me, inside it was proof. Receipts, communications, tampered documents. In that moment, a stillness came over me, the way it does when something inside you breaks not all at once, but quietly piece by piece. On the switch, her sister's name was Molly. A nurse at the clinic Grant had so adamantly fought for, the one he insisted was perfect. As in now I knew why. According to Molly's statement, it started 7 months ago. Grant approached her directly, professional, even charming at first, said we had a special situation no one else needed to know about. He claimed he was using donor sperm, something about a family genetic problem he didn't want to burden me with. Told her it would cause emotional harm if I knew. It's not sinister, he told her. It's a precaution, just something I'm not ready to share with my wife. I love her too much to see her hurt. And then he offered $30,000. Oh gosh. For a nurse making just over 50 grand a year, drowning in student loans. It was life-changing. Molly said she thought she was helping a couple preserve their marriage. Instead, she was helping a con artist commit medical fraud. And he didn't stop there. Grant didn't take chances. He knew one accomplice wasn't enough. He approached another staff member, the embryologist. $20,000 in cash this time. Same story, private arrangement. Just needed to make a small switch, replacing his sample with a donor S, all entirely consensual, or so he claimed. Between the two of them, they changed out the sperm sample before fertilization. So our second IVF success. The embryo growing inside me right now. Not genetically related to my husband at all. And he knew it. From the very beginning. The real donor. His name was Derek Sykes. A 28-year-old graduate student who'd been offered $15,000 in cash, way above standard donor rates, to help an anonymous, affluent couple maintain privacy. No contracts, just one meeting with the embryologist, quick and quiet. He thought he was doing something generous. Turns out he was unknowingly participating in layered fraud against a woman he'd never met. Me. He was devastated when he found out the truth. Molly had tracked him down out of guilt. When she learned the pregnancy had been successful and that I still didn't know, the guilt became unbearable. Panic attacks, sleepless nights. She finally broke and confessed everything to her sister, Claire. Which led to this moment. Me. Sitting across from a doctor. 4 months pregnant. Reading a folder that proved my husband had spent $50,000 to frame me for cheating. The plan. Dr. Brennan laid out the rest in slow, careful detail, but honestly, by that point, I was already 10 steps behind the words I was hearing. I was rewatching every moment of my marriage in reverse. But she needed me to understand the full scope. The full architectural cruelty of it. Because Grant hadn't just switched the samples, that was phase 1. Phase 2, wait until I was successfully pregnant. Be the doting, supportive husband, get everyone on his side, build the image of the perfect partner, make no one suspect a thing. Phase 3, post-birth, he would fake medical documents. The official records would show our IVF cycle failed. That we had conceived naturally afterward. Proof that I had cheated. Phase 4, he'd suggest a paternity test. Frame it as a sweet keepsake, proof of his bond with our child. Romantic, thoughtful, completely staged. Phase 5, use the DNA test to accuse me of adultery. The medical records would show Grant couldn't biologically conceive, and the test would prove I betrayed him. Oh, the trap said. Spring-loaded, perfected over a year. Once I was exposed, crying, devastated, scrambling to protect my baby's reputation, he'd slide in prepared with the prenup papers claiming infidelity. A clause that said if one spouse cheats, they owe the other $500,000 and forfeit all claim to property or inheritance. He would play the heartbroken man's. He'd walk away with everything's and leave me a lying, unfaithful woman disgraced. All built on deception. But he got greedy. Greed, it's what got him caught. He stole the money for bribes from his clients, embezzled over $50,000 through microtransactions at his firm, just enough to stay under the radar. No one saw it yet. But now that I had it in writings, oh, they would. The cold set in. As I left that office an hour later, document copies in hand, barely breathing, I couldn't cry, couldn't scream, couldn't even blink. The betrayal, it was too big, too sharp. It didn't just wound me, it dismantled the trust I thought I was standing on. But then something strange happened. I went still. Somewhere deep inside, a new kind of clarity took its place. Grant thought I would fall apart. That I'd be too shocked, too heartbroken, too pregnant to fight back. He thought I'd give in quietly just to make it stop. But he made one miscalculation. He forgot who I was. He underestimated the woman he married. He thought he'd married a Mark, he married a Wilsons, and we don't burn quietly. Drove home from that appointment like I was on autopilot. Hands measured on the wheel, breath steady, eyes fixed forward. Because I knew something Grant didn't. He had cameras installed around the house, supposedly for security, but now I suspected surveillance. It felt like every glance, every twitch of hesitation could be caught, analyzed, replayed. He liked pretending I was safe inside our little home, where he could watch me closely. So I walked in that day with a smile on my face, cool and bright as afternoon sunlight. He was in the kitchen, already there, holding a glass of wine, that same practiced smile etched across his face. "How was the appointment?" he asked. "Is the baby okay?" I pulled out the ultrasound print Dr. Brennan had managed to snap, before turning off the monitor, before lighting a match to my reality. "Everything's perfect," I said, handing him the photo. "A healthy heartbeat, 10 fingers, 10 toes." I smiled and hugged him from behind. He had no idea I was already planning his downfalls. The act of a lifetime. That night, we had dinner together like any normal couple would. I asked about his day. I laughed when he made a stupid joke about baby names. I brought him fresh tea while he watched reruns of The Office like the world wasn't slowly closing in. And when I mentioned how I'd been hormonal and irrational lately, he relaxed completely. The tension in his shoulders faded like mist. He kissed my forehead, told me he understood. He thought the manipulation had worked. That's how I knew his ego was still running the show. His fatal flaw wasn't love or lies or lust. It was underestimating me. Day one of the real plan. The next morning, I called out sick from work. Then I got in my car, filled a thermos with coffee, and drove 2 hours to a city where Grant wouldn't expect me to be. I kept a close eye on my rearview mirror the whole time. Maybe I was being paranoid. But paranoia was earned at this point. Rosalind Weaver, private investigator, professional shark. She ran her office out of a converted firehouse tucked between a locksmith shop and a dental clinic. Her walls were lined with old case photos, shelves stacked with thick binders and blunt honesty. "Talk fast," she said. "You're either in a mess or about to create one." I laid the entire story on the tables. Everything. The fertility scam, the $50,000 in embezzled hush money, the DNA trap, the trust fund, even the ultrasound appointment that launched the atomic bomb. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she leaned back slowly, hands folded. Your husband made a lot of mistakes. Arrogant men always do. She smiled. Give me 2 weeks. She had results in 10 days. $180,000 in gambling debt. Grant had been hemorrhaging money to online poker rooms, sports betting, and a handful of very shady private lenders, the kind who don't send reminders. They send messages. Embezzlement confirmed. Rosalind found transactions, tiny ones, cherry-picked from multiple client portfolios, carefully hidden, just enough to fund his operation. $53,000 altogether. Then the affair. Oh yes, 8 months. With his assistant. Weekend trips disguised as conferences. Hotel receipts, romantic dinners, photos that looked like they belonged in a tabloid. A cliché doesn't even begin to cover it. At first, I was insulted. Then I was furious. You're going to blow up our marriage for your cliché assistant? At least be original, at least have standards. A pattern of predation. Rosalind uncovered one more gem. Before me, Grant had dated a trust fund heiress in Boston named Caroline Ashford. They met at a networking event just like ours. Dated for nearly a year, and then she discovered small discrepancies in the joint account he'd pressured her to open, unexplained wire transfers. When she confronted him, he vanished from her life without explanation. Too wealthy, too ashamed, she never pressed charges. Rosalind tracked her down. This time, Caroline was ready to talk. Recruiting the confession. My next move was more complicated. I met Dr. Brennan's sister, Molly, at a coffee shop one town over, a quiet hour away where no one would recognize us. She looked haunted. Thin, pale, wrists trembling around her coffee cup. The shame poured off her like steam. I'm so sorry, she kept saying. He convinced me it was harmless, that it was private. I didn't know he was planning this. I asked her just one thing. Are you willing to testify, under oath, give everything to the police if necessary? No hesitation. Yes, whatever it takes. She wasn't the villain. She was used. Just like me. The embryologist cracks. Once he found out Molly kept documentation, the embryologist lost his nerve. He folded in less than 24 hours, agreed to testify in exchange for a lighter deal, said he was terrified of prison, terrified of losing his license. We now had 3 witnesses. Each one part of a scheme they regretted. Each one ready to testify. The hardest call. I stared at my phone for 5 minutes before finally pressing the button. 2 years of silence between us. 2 years of me rejecting my mother's instincts because I thought she was controlling, overbearing. Wrong. She picked up on the second ring. Daphne. Her voice was cautious, hopeful, like she'd been waiting for this call but didn't want to rush it. Tears hit me mid-sentence. You were right, I choked. Grant, everything you warned me about, it's all true. I'm sorry, I should have. She cut me off quietly. What do you need, sweetheart? Not I told you so. Not finally. Just what do you need? I've never cried harder in my life than I did hearing that. Family first. My mother, Vivian Wilson, was a retired estate attorney, 30 years in high-stakes litigation. Within 48 hours, she had a divorce lawyer lined up and a criminal prosecutor ready to evaluate the case. She took my side without hesitation because that's what real love looks like. Her name may as well have been Order of Operations, because everything clicked into focus once she stepped in. He thinks he's been playing chess, she said, reviewing the documents. Perfect. Because it's time we take his bishop, his queen, and leave him with checkmate. The legal arsenal. My lawyer, Sandra Kowalski, looked like your favorite grandmother. 5'0", cardigan, modest pearl earrings. She had the soul of a knife. After reading the affidavits, the medical records, the financials, she looked up from the table. Your husband is facing fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. Not to mention the infidelity clause. This isn't just a divorce. This is a takedown. She coordinated discreetly with the prosecutor's office. The police were looped in, probable cause established, an arrest warrant was quietly drawn up and sealed. Everything moved in secret, because he couldn't know until it was too late to hide. The party. 6 weeks later, I did something bold. I threw a baby shower at my grandmother's estate, co-hosted by me and my adoring husband. The theme was new beginnings. Grant was thrilled. "That's a wonderful idea, babe," he said. "Let me help plan it." I stopped him sweetly. "No, no, you work so hard. Let me handle the logistics." I didn't tell him my version of planning included two police officers waiting inside the guest house, my lawyer stationed near the bar, Grant's boss on the guest list, Derek Sykes, the donor, seated next to a reporter, video statements from Molly, the embryologist, and the private investigator. Oh, and of course, a fully printed folder of everything he thought he'd buried. It was all ready, one chessboard, one final move. Grant didn't know it, but the curtain was about to rise on his last performance.